So let me introduce our first speaker, Reed Robinson. I'm going to read from my notes. Reed is a founder, community builder, and investor. His direct startup experiences range from co-founding a small consumer tech company to an acquisition as an employee of a venture-backed startup. As a co-founder of Beta and Twin Cities Startup Week, Reed has developed programming and channeled community investments into Minnesota's most promising early-stage startups. With Groove Capital, Reed is providing first check investments to the area's top innovators whose products and services make the world a better place, starting in Minnesota. Welcome, Reed.
Thank you. So happy to be here. All right, I will jump back. I'll just jump right in. I love this topic. And though I was not invited to that first session, this has been something that I've been super passionate about since my first fuck up in 2013. If you're looking at the slide, you may see a familiar logo there called Heroic. And if it's familiar, it's because following this tech startup experience, I became a bit of obsessed around the topic of failure and learning from failure. And so I'm actually not going to talk about that specific journey. That's something that I've done in many different places. But I do want to kind of set you up with like what happened after that. So next slide, Alex, if you wouldn't mind. So what I did after failing in a startup, we raised money, we spent money, basically learned everything that you shouldn't do as a technology firm. I really wanted to process it. And I really wanted to kind of buck the trend that I was seeing here in the Twin Cities community of like, if you fail, you randomly disappear for 6 months and nobody never knows like what happened and what you did. And I just wasn't okay with that. So instead I wanted to do the opposite. And so, you know, picture Moses coming down from the mount with these 2 tablets full of lessons that I wanted to impart on the, you know, startup community. I created these lessons from a failed startup and I brought them to the university. I pitched it within beta sessions. I brought it to Minibar. And so you may have seen these, you may have heard this. And this is not a repeat of that. This is actually not about that failure. This is about the failure of me taking all of what I've learned here, completely ignoring it, and then making the exact same mistakes all over again. So how did I get to that point? Next slide. So when I left Heroic, I went to Oral. This is kind of like when I'm shopping around this content and really trying to champion failure. A few years after that, I ended up back in a technology company called Equals 3. And so the caveat in this conversation isn't that company is a failure, that leadership is a failure. This is really my experience within that organization that didn't go the way that we had planned. All right, so next slide. I'm not going to walk you through my entire experience of working at Equals 3, but I'm going to drop you into what was going on in my head about a year into working at Equals 3. And if you haven't already jumped to the conclusion here, you can already see that, I was like doing a little bit of some things right. And I was learning, I was feeling confident, like I had a good idea of how to be successful in a business. But then there was this whole basket of goods that was just either completely being ignored, or the things that I was like so confidently and so self-assured about of what I learned from the previous experience ended up being just completely ass backwards and not what I thought it was. And so let me share a couple examples with you of what I was thinking and where my head was at. The most like blatant disregard for this was that gentleman in the bottom right corner, which was this lesson that was all about like, don't do the thing that's sexy, do the thing that like nobody else wants to do, because there's going to be less competition. You know, you're going to there's people don't want to do it. And therefore, if you do it, you're going to have this competitive advantage. And there's pieces of that are true. But what I did is I went into a artificial intelligence company at what was probably the peak hype cycle of artificial intelligence, the like sexiest type of business you could possibly do. And so I completely ignored my own advice and found myself back in that situation. The other thing that I found in learning about this was these things weren't what I thought they were. And so I'll call out one that was about building versus selling. When I was at Heroic, I was convinced like we overbuilt, we undersold. Now I wanted to reverse that and really be this, take this model that you build and then sell. And now through learning at Equals 3 and my experiences after that, it's not sequential. It's actually something that's balanced. It's something that's constantly changing and attention that's changing over time. And so it didn't work out. I was at Equals 3 for a little less than 2 years. That I was planning to be there as long as it took to exit, and probably shouldn't have thought this, but I thought that might be within 3 or 4 years, and it didn't last. And there was a couple reasons why that was the case, which I'll kind of elaborate on the next slide. But what does that mean to me now and who I am? Learning lessons, failing, repeating lessons, and finding myself in where we are now. So Alex or Jack, next slide. First of all, like failure is what you get to define what you call it, right? So as long as I'm learning, I never consider these things failure. The second part is like, what have you learned about yourself along the way? For me, I'm attracted to like sexy technology objects. That's just who I am. And so like now I know that about myself and I accept it along with all of my other strengths and weaknesses, and I allow myself some grace, which my younger self in my career didn't necessarily do. And then the last piece is really about doing what you love. And this one, if you remember anything from this conversation, I really hope that it's this point. And the reason I bring it up is in both of those cases, working at Heroic and working at Equals 3, I was working really, really hard, and I was unhappy. I was unhappy because I was just like, I was so overwhelmed with the work, and I was taking myself too seriously, and I was just not really feeling like I was making the impact that I wanted to make. And so I got to this place where, I'm feeling these feelings again in Equals 3. And then a few things happened. My best friend's wife nearly died from a brain aneurysm. I had one of a close friends from high school's husband pass away from cancer. And we had our first kid on the way. And I started looking around at like my situation and what did I want to do and how did I want to spend my time in my life. And I decided life is too short. And I left. I went to Beta. I ran that full time. And I began to love what I did. And I get to do that now with Groove. So my lesson, wasn't expecting this, but life is short and do what you love. And now I work harder than I ever worked, and I love every minute of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. That was incredibly powerful. And I know you didn't expect to go there. And I think we really appreciate that you did. A question that has come up for me is, when you're fucking up and you're impacting the people around you, how do you rebuild trust with family, investors, partners? Have you had that experience?
if you treat people with respect, they give you some slack. So just do the right thing. And you know, we had an investor that supported us during Heroic, and I think we were closer after the fact because of the way that we had handled how that got shut down. So I think as long as you are, you know, you beat people to the questions, and you overshare, you become over transparent. People want to support you, and people want to, you know, have your back. So when you do the right thing, it all works itself out.
Yeah, absolutely. Where does your entrepreneurial spirit come from?
I don't know. It's in the blood. I like control, and yeah, I'm pretty impatient and not super coachable in a lot of ways. So I don't really think I have any other options.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's self-aware. That's very self-aware. Another question, was there a defining moment when you knew it was time to leave Beta and start Groove?
When I went into Beta, I knew that was temporary. And it's because the structure of Beta, though I'm super proud of what we created, as an entrepreneur, I never felt like it was the right place for me to be. It's a 501c3, and the nature of what we were doing didn't match with what I wanted to achieve. And so, you know, I kind of knew that going into it. And so by the time it came on the other side that I needed to leave, it was really about like, how do I set this thing up to, you know, live beyond me? And then when I found that, you know, the organization was at a position where it was okay for me to do that, it was more natural than anything. And you know, it's a big part because of Casey, who's running it now, and being able to trust her, see her grow into it. And then, you know, I was just getting in the way at one point.
Yeah, that's great. We are going to close down the Q&A for Reed right now, but we will have some time at the end. So if any other questions come up for Reed, please hold on to them, and then we'll be able to ask more towards the end. So Reed, thank you so much again for sharing that story. Let's give him a round of applause.